It's hard to believe that week 10 is already here, but it's time to do some previews and predictions for the upcoming games. We start with an early week game, the game tonight against James Madison and Texas State. This is a James Madison team that's favored by 6.5 points, still technically has the college football playoff opportunity in front of them, but they're going to need some help. They cannot afford to lose another game. And so this one is going to be a big one for this team. To be able to win this game is going to be a massive opportunity for them. But Texas State is a team that can score in a hurry. This is going to be a very interesting one. I am going to take James Madison on the road, but keep an eye on the Texas State Bobcats to potentially give James Madison a little bit of trouble. Thursday night, Tulane heads to UTSA and they're 4.5 point favorites. UTSA not having the season that we thought they might have, but still a team that's going to be tough to beat. Tulane still has its sights set on the college football playoff, on the American Conference Championship. John Summerall's team is still very much focused on that. Jake Retzlaff has been pretty good for them this year. You like to see him get a little bit more involved in the passing attack in terms of explosive plays. Plenty of talent to be able to do that. The defense, though, has been really fun, plays with a lot of energy. Stopping Robert Henry Jr. is always going to be a challenge. That being said, I do like Tulane. I think that they're going to be able to slow him down enough and be able to get a win in this game. North Carolina heads to Syracuse, where the Orange are 2.5 point favorites. This is going to be a really interesting game in terms of, do we see any promise for some of these guys that are stepping into new positions? Ricky Collins so far has been underwhelming. So can he deliver for a Syracuse team that cannot afford to lose this game? I think that they have to win this game. For North Carolina, you just got to find a way to get the job done somehow, some way. The fact that you're only 2.5 point underdog speaks to your chances in this game. That being said, I am going to go with Syracuse. I just don't think that North Carolina has it in them to pull this one out. A game that was supposed to be a huge game in the Big Ten. Penn State goes to Ohio State as 20.5 point underdogs, and this one might get out of hand early. Julian Sayin is playing really confident, and it helps when you have guys like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So being able to throw those guys makes things a little bit easier. Without Drew Aller, this offense for Penn State is in a lot of trouble. Ethan Grunkmeyer clearly is not a good option for them at the quarterback position, at least not compared to what Drew Aller brought to the table. And this is a Penn State team that is struggling. And I don't think that's going to change. I think Ohio State, especially at home, is going to be able to take care of business. I don't really have too many concerns about them being able to win this game. Vanderbilt at Texas is a ranked matchup. Despite what Texas has gone through this year, the struggles they've endured, this is a ranked matchup, and Texas still technically is alive for the college football playoff. So they are looking to potentially pull off an upset here, even though they are favored at home. I think this would still be kind of an upset in a way because of how well Vanderbilt is playing. Now, the quarterback position for Texas is kind of up in the air. Is Arch Manning going to play? Does Matthew Caldwell have to step in once again? That's going to be a big question for this team. I thought Arch Manning played pretty well last game, so that's something that could be a trend to keep an eye on if he's able to continue that, assuming he's able to stay on the field. That being said, I think that this is a very interesting matchup of two teams that are very different teams. Texas is a team that has a ton of skill and wants to go pretty fast, and Vanderbilt has skill of its own, but they're very much a tough-nosed team that's going to keep things efficient, and they're not necessarily trying to play at a track speed, but they're going to be able to be efficient and hit explosive plays from time to time. Now, Texas is trying to figure things out still, and the fact that they're still in contention for the college football playoffs speaks to the potential they have for the rest of the season. And if they're able to kind of hit their stride, Texas is one of those teams that they're just not out of it yet. And again, if they're able to figure some things out and they're able to find some momentum, this is a dangerous team. I would be worried about Texas if they're able to do that. The problem is that we haven't seen them consistently hit that. Now, the defense is still very much a tough group to go against. Colin Simmons is an absolute unit. Anthony Hill is kind of forgotten right now because of the team's struggles, but he is still very much a star. Jelani McDonald and Michael Tapp in the secondary, those two have been good as well. So this defense for Texas is going to be fun to watch against this Vanderbilt offense. That's going to be an absolute battle. Diego Pavia against this Texas defense is worth watching. I think that you have you have a guy in Diego Pavia going against a unit that is one of the best in college football, and Pavia is ready for that challenge. You look at what he's done so far this year. This is very much a player that is competitive. He is ready for this challenge, and Texas will have their hands full, not just with him, but with the rest of this offense as well. You look at the rushing attack for Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia leads the charge there. Kylan Young, Cedric Alexander, those are two guys that are going to contribute as well. The passing attack is a little bit spread out. Everybody knows that Eli Stowers is going to be part of that, but Junior Sherrill's had his moments. Trey Richardson has been explosive. So this Vanderbilt offense has its fair share of weapons that Texas must worry about as well. Speaking of good defenses, Vanderbilt's defense does not get enough recognition, in my opinion. I think this is a group that has a ton of exciting players, and they just don't get, again, the recognition that they deserve because maybe they're not as talented as some of the other players that they face. That being said, good luck playing against this defense because you have a number of players that are going to give you plenty of trouble. A group is led by Brian Longwell and Langston Patterson at the linebacker position. Miles Capers off to a career start for his 2025 season, and that defensive line is going to create a lot of problems for a Texas offensive line that has struggled mightily this year. So again, whoever the quarterback is going to be for Texas, you're going to have to worry about this defense. You are going to have to worry about how much time you have to make plays because while we've seen some guys step up like Ryan Wingo, like Parker Livingston, you know that the quarterback is worried about how much time they will have to throw. And Vanderbilt's done a good job of getting to the quarterback at times. They have been extremely disruptive. They've been a problem, and they have influenced the game because of what they've been able to do. And again, most of the spotlight is on Clark Lee and Diego Pavia, but I think that this Vanderbilt defense deserves a lot more spotlight than maybe they're commanding right now. There's plenty of season still left. So for a group that is 24th in scoring defense, they will get their time in the spotlight plenty for the rest of the season. And right now, I think everybody is giving Texas's defense its love, and rightfully so, but Vanderbilt's defense also deserves to be in that conversation as well. Now, picking this game is going to be interesting because Texas is favored at home. And again, who knows what the quarterback position is going to look like by the time that this game is played. As of right now, it's very uncertain. That being said, I do trust Vanderbilt to win this game. I think that they're a little bit more consistent than Texas, regardless of who plays at the quarterback position. If Arch plays, it gives them a better chance. I think if Caldwell plays, it's going to be a long night for the Texas Longhorns, and Vanderbilt is going to get the job done regardless of who starts. Miami at SMU. Miami is a 10.5-point favorite, and I thought that Miami was going to be a team that was just like Ohio State, where nobody was really going to touch them, and they have looked anything but that since I've really thought that the last couple of games have been kind of rough, and this is a big time opportunity for Miami to get right against an SMU team that can give them plenty of challenges. So in a way, this might be a good opportunity for Miami to wake up, right? So far, we've seen this team do some really incredible things. We've also seen some stretches where, I talked about this a few weeks ago, that there were stretches where Miami's just not putting their foot on the throttle. They're not hitting the gas. They're taking it easy, and they're having lapses in intensity. That came back to bite them. And I think that that's going to be something to keep an eye on, especially if they want to win a national championship. You have to be an absolute juggernaut if you want to survive something like this. And the fact that they struggled as much as they have in certain stretches gives you concern. This is a game, though, that I think they're able to kind of turn things around. Carson Beck has an opportunity in front of him to be able to remind everyone why he was once in the Heisman conversation. He's looking to get back into that conversation. Over 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns to 7 picks. That is not what we anticipated coming into this year, and we're kind of reverting back to our old ways here with Carson Beck. Now, the rushing attack still continues to be a solid group. Sharma Brown and Mark Fletcher Jr. are a great 1-2 punch. Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels are getting the job done at wide receiver. This is going to be an interesting matchup because SMU has the talent offensively to put up some points. Now, can they do that against this Miami defense? That's going to be a big question because Miami's been able to take over games defensively. They've been able to shut teams down. And when you have guys like Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, that's always going to be a possibility. This is a group that plays with a ton of intensity, a ton of passion, and they fly around the field, which is kind of why you brought Corey Heatherman in the first place, right? You thought we needed a change at defensive coordinator. We bring in a guy that can get his unit to collectively play at a different level. And so far, that's what this group has been. So if the offense can just be consistent and Carson Beck takes care of the football, there shouldn't be too many questions about who can win this game. Miami should be able to win this game. The fact that they're 10.5-point favorites speaks to the confidence in Miami by the books. Now, SMU is 5-3. So while you're thinking normally SMU is going to be a problem, they definitely are still a problem. The fact that they lost to Wake Forest last week is not great, but Rhett Lashley's team is capable of winning this football game. I don't think that you can look at their 5-3 record and think they have no chance. They do have a chance, and they're at home. So that's something to keep an eye on, something that could go in their favor. Kevin Jennings has to have a big game, and so far he's been better than people anticipated or people expected. Over 2,100 yards, 17 touchdowns. The 8 picks obviously aren't great, but you've also seen him shine at times. The rushing attack kind of flies under the radar for SMU. The wide receivers have played a big role in this offense, but the rushing attack has been kind of an underrated piece of this team. Chris Johnson Jr. has emerged as an explosive threat. TJ Harden is the steady force that leads that charge. So that's a good group that will be able to provide some challenges to Miami's defense. Same thing with the passing attack. Jennings is going to have to play his role, but there are plenty of players to utilize in the passing attack. Romello Brinson has been obviously the consistent one. We'd like to see RJ Maryland get a little bit more involved. They have gotten Chris Johnson Jr. the ball quite a bit, 13 times. Yamir Knight. There are plenty of guys that you have to worry about when you face this team. Now, whether or not they can create explosives off of that is the big question. The defense has been really interesting because we talk about this group and how good they can be. We've seen this group thrive. We've also seen this group struggle. Which group we get might dictate how close this game is and if SMU even has a chance to be able to beat Miami. Because if their offense is struggling against this Hurricanes defense, they're going to need their defense to play just as well. And we've seen as of late, Isaiah Smith has been phenomenal. This is a defensive line that has been a good group and disruptive, and they are carrying this defense at times. So if they're able to do that against what is one of the best offensive lines in college football, SMU is going to feel really good about what they can do. That being said, I think Miami is going to take this game about as seriously as they've taken any game this year. And I do trust that the Hurricanes will win. It's just that I don't know how close it's going to be. That's going to be the big question. Which SMU team we get will dictate a lot. If they're able to keep things close, it's because Kevin Jennings is moving the ball down the field. They're hitting those explosive plays, and this defense is playing to the level that we all know they're capable of playing. Duke heads to Clemson, where the Tigers are a 3.5-point favorite over the Blue Devils, but this is one to keep an eye on in terms of an upset. Clemson is kind of reeling right now, even though they've had some nice emergences as of late. TJ Moore has stepped up as of late in a big way, and he's been really fun to watch, playing with a lot of confidence. Cade Klubnik, though, still kind of having that roller coaster ride. Whether or not they're able to hold off a Duke team that is a very dangerous team, I warned everyone in the ACC about this. Duke is a team to keep an eye on in terms of the damage they can do, because nobody's really paying attention to them as a contender. Darian Mensah is a very talented quarterback playing with a lot of confidence. The defense can be stifling as well. And I am actually going to go with the Duke Blue Devils to go on the road and beat the Clemson Tigers. Navy at North Texas is a game that is getting wildly overlooked. And this is kind of the hard part of college football, is the group of five continues to fall further and further back. And obviously, the transfer portal and a number of other factors are a big reason why. However, media are just not covering these games anymore. They're just not. They're going for the big ones. And obviously, it's all about views. It's all about clicks. But there are still good group of five games. I think people need to understand that. Navy at North Texas is one of the better games of Week 10. You have the 7-0 midshipmen going against a 7-1 Mean Green team that just put up a ton of points and a ton of yards last week. This is going to be a unique matchup, and this is what makes college football fun. You have a triple option attack going against an air raid offense, and you have two teams that are expecting to compete for an American Conference championship, and if everything goes right, a potential shot at the college football playoff. And can you imagine what it will look like if Navy is in the college football playoff? I just think that would be so much fun. And obviously, I get why the views for this, the coverage for this isn't great. However, this is still a fun game. If you are trying to expand your horizons in college football, this is the game for you. You have two great quarterbacks going at it in Blake Horvath and Drew Mestemaker. Horvath's actually been pretty solid as a passer. He's already over 1,000 yards passing. I don't know the history of Navy passing, but I would guess that's probably the quickest, or one of the quickest, to over 1,000 yards that we've maybe ever seen. He's also gotten on track with his rushing. When you look at the first few games, Horvath wasn't as efficient as you maybe thought he would be coming into the year, but other guys stepped up, and he's the quarterback. So you figure if you have a good offense for Navy, it's because your quarterback is good. And that was the case. It's just that his production wasn't there. His passing was good. The rushing wasn't. After a few games, though, he figures it out, becomes the guy that we expected him to be, and he's all the way up to 814 yards and 12 touchdowns. So there's really not any concerns. The rushing attack for Navy has been one of the best in college football. Alex Texa has been really good. Brandon Chapman's been involved. Eli Heinrich is a Swiss Army knife. You look at his production for the midshipman this year: 41 carries for 285 yards, 7 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. He's also caught 25 passes for 507 yards. That's 20.3 yards per catch. That leads the team by a wide margin, and 4 touchdowns. So this offense is just as creative, just as dangerous, and just as explosive, because Blake Horvath has been playing really well, and guys like Eli Heinrich have been playing at a high level also. On the defensive side of the ball, Landon Robinson is a name that not a lot of people know, and it's one that everybody should know. He has been a force for this midshipman defense, and they're going to need him to do that once again. They will need this defense to get to this North Texas offense and to Drew Mestemaker as much as possible. Mestemaker had a monster game last week. You look at what he did throughout the season, and you knew that, hey, this is a guy that if he gets it all figured out, he's going to be dangerous. Last week, we saw that against Charlotte. You had 3 guys go over 100 yards receiving, and this is an offense that is playing with a lot of confidence. Even in the game against USF, there were times where, even though they lost, there were times where we saw this group play really efficiently and create those explosive plays. And we've seen a number of wide receivers step up. Wyatt Young's been playing really well. Cameron Dorner, another guy that's been pretty good. Miles Coleman at times has been explosive. So there are plenty of options. And if you're Navy, there's a lot that you have to worry about in terms of covering. There's a lot that you have to stop. Now, North Texas defense, this is where the biggest concern is for this game. This North Texas defense has been porous at times. They have been inconsistent. And now you're facing a triple option attack that requires you to be disciplined, that requires you to play with gap discipline, that requires you to do your assignment and make sure that everybody's doing their assignment. Will they be able to do that? Because the number of potential fakes that you're going to fall for could make this dangerously bad for North Texas. Now, you're going to put pressure on Navy by putting up points with your offense. But if your defense can't stop this midshipman offense, you're going to be in for a long, long day. And it's going to be fun regardless, though. I think that this is going to be one of the better games of the weekend. You have two very different teams going against each other, two offenses that can put up points, and two quarterbacks that are worth the price of admission. Again, not a lot of people are going to watch this one, unfortunately, but they should. That's a good matchup, regardless of what level you want to look at and what you're looking for in college football. And in terms of picking who's going to win this game, I'm going to go with North Texas. I think that if they're able to continue the explosiveness they have on offense, Navy just doesn't have the firepower to be able to keep up. If North Texas defense struggles to slow down that triple option attack, we could be talking about a much different outcome when it's all said and done. Arizona State's looking to bounce back against Iowa State, and the Cyclones are a 5.5-point favorite at home, so that might be difficult for the Sun Devils. They lose to Houston last week, and playing Iowa State on the road is going to be a challenge. That is an atmosphere that is very difficult to play in, and Iowa State is kind of the forgotten team in the Big 12 right now in terms of potential contenders. So we'll keep an eye on this one. In terms of picking this game, it really depends on if Sam Leavitt is able to go, if Jordan Tyson is able to go for Arizona State. I think that gives them a big difference. Two big difference makers in that game. So for now, we're going to go with Iowa State unless something else changes. New Mexico at UNLV. We don't have to go into this one too much. A super underrated matchup. New Mexico is a tough team, and you saw that last week. A team that can surprise a lot of people, and they could potentially do that this week. I am going to go with UNLV, though. I think that Dan Mullen's team is just too explosive, and if New Mexico is able to dictate the pace, maybe that changes, but UNLV is going to come away with the win. Indiana at Maryland. Indiana is a 21.5-point favorite, and Malik Washington continues to be one of the more intriguing players in the Big Ten. It's just going to be tough to go against this Indiana offense and defense, and really just the Indiana team in general is always going to be a challenge for whatever quarterback is facing them. Indiana's defense is disruptive. They wreak havoc on any quarterback that they play, and Malik Washington is going to have to show that he has poise. His receivers are also going to have to come down with catches more consistently than they have this year. And really, Indiana is going to win this game. It's just going to be a matter of how close Maryland can keep it and for how long. Indiana is an absolute wagon right now, and it's going to be tough for Maryland to get any stops and keep this one close. Georgia and Florida. Georgia is a 7.5-point favorite. I'm very curious to see how Florida responds after Billy Napier is fired. How do they play after losing their head coach? That is going to be a big question for this one, and playing against a rival makes things a little bit more emotional and a little bit more challenging. Now, Georgia has not been as dominant as we once thought they might be. This is a group that was going through quite a bit of change, and we've seen some of that change affect this team's play. Gunnar Stockton has also, I think he's played pretty well as of late, and much better than I think people realize. He's been someone that's dialed in. Again, someone who's just playing within the system, not trying to be a hero, not trying to make too many big plays. He's just taking what the defense gives him, going with like what Mike Bobo has been calling, and it's done well for Georgia. Now, another emergence that we have to talk about that has been very impactful is the emergence of Chauncey Bowens. The rushing attack, we had some questions about who is going to be the guy. It wasn't because there wasn't talent. It was because we didn't know who was going to step up. And there have been some concerns about Nate Frazier and his ability to hang on to the football. And lately, Gunnar Stockton has been a part of that, but Chauncey Bowens has been the guy that has stepped up and delivered in big moments. 376 yards, he's averaging 5.4 yards per carry and 4 touchdowns. He has been really fun to watch in the rushing attack, and that's going to be a big key going against this Florida defense that is keeping this Florida Gators team in games for most of the season. and it's going to be physical. It's going to be fun. And Bowens is a guy that can bring that physicality that Georgia needs and can give them an advantage that they'll need in this game as well. Now, the defense has been full of ups and downs. You've seen some good things, you've seen some bad things, and you're going against a Florida offense that looks much different in the last couple weeks than they did at the beginning of the season. So how do you stop that? How do you stop a guy like Dallas Wilson, who looks like a grown man playing as a freshman? That has been really fun to watch. And when DJ Lagway's been able to find him, this offense is on a different level. And you've seen this offense play a lot better ever since he's returned. You've seen UJ Wilson play a little bit better. J. Michael Sturdivant has stepped up a little bit more. Vernell Brown, another freshman, has played well, but the biggest beneficiary has been Jaden Baugh. And I'm curious to see what he can do against this Georgia defense, as well as how can they keep DJ Lagway upright and comfortable in the pocket. Lagway is still very talented. The stats obviously don't tell you that and tell you that he's been struggling. However, this is a guy that is very capable of making big time plays and making sure that he has an impact in a rivalry game. That is going to be very fun to watch if you're a Florida fan. And how do you get him to play with that confidence? And who knows what this team is going to be. Without your head coach, some teams take it and they show the improvement. Other teams just continue going down the bad path. I'm very curious which one this Florida team is going to be, because that tells me who's checked out, who's moving on to the future, guys that are going to hit the portal. And Lagway in this offense, there's a number of guys I'm very curious to see how they step up and how they respond to that adversity, because they're going against a Georgia team that's going to be motivated, obviously, to beat them because it's a rivalry game, because of the importance of what's still at stake for this Georgia team. Now, this defense for Florida needs to continue playing at the level they've been playing at. They've been playing so well at times, and the intensity which they bring to the game allows Florida to have a chance. And even though the Florida offense has not played its part, this defense continues to play at a level that is extremely respectable. So if I'm Florida, I'm hoping that this defense just continues that through the rest of the year. Now, as long as we keep going, if this team keeps losing, eventually that Florida defense is probably going to stop with that intensity. And it's not because they're not trying. It's because they're tired. They've been doing it for so long, and eventually something's got to give. And if this offense can't get the job done, then eventually something's going to cave, and that's going to result in more and more losses, and the defense just going to run out of gas like we talked about. For Georgia, though, you have to win this game. This is such an important game to be able to handle and take care of business. You already have one loss. Losing another one isn't going to knock you out, but losing to Florida might be a bad enough loss that could potentially keep you out. There's going to be a lot of teams in the SEC that want to get in the playoff, and you have to limit how many opportunities teams have to knock you down. And even though it's a rivalry game, it's going to be closer than I think a lot of people realize. This is a game that's going to be fun, and I think that Georgia is going to be able to take care of this game. They're going to be able to put away Florida and win this one in week 10. Michigan State and Minnesota are both looking for a win in a big way. Aiden Childs and Drake Lindsay are looking to get back on track, look to find some success and some consistency. I'm going to go with the Gophers. I keep going with my hometown team. Maybe it's a little bit more biased, but Michigan State has a lot to figure out. Minnesota's at least shown some consistency this year. Notre Dame, Boston College. This one I think is going to be interesting to see if Notre Dame can just kind of jump out to a big lead early and take care of business. Boston College struggling a lot more than I thought they would in 2025. I'm going with Notre Dame to win this one. There's not really a question in my mind about that. One of the biggest games of the weekend is Texas Tech at Kansas State. Now, after the first few weeks, you might have thought this is not really that big of a game, but Texas Tech looks a little bit vulnerable. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Kansas State, though, playing with a lot of confidence in the last 4 games. They're 3-1 after a 1-3 start through their first 4 games. And a big reason why is Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson has been a completely different quarterback in the last 4 games, and the offense has thrived because of it. They're averaging a lot more points than they were in those first 4 games, and Johnson has been a big reason why. He continues to be explosive, and the biggest thing for this team is Avery Johnson's using his legs. He's used his legs a lot more, and while he is still trying to be more of that pocket passer, his legs are one of his best assets, and Kansas State is letting him use that a little bit more. Now, there's still not a ton of design quarterback runs, but he's at least taking off and scrambling. One of the things that we looked at coming into, after the first 4 games was Avery Johnson had opportunities to run, and sometimes it was wide open field, but you could see that his brain short circuits where he's trying to make the right pass. And sometimes he would make the right pass, and other times he'd wait too long, and then he'd have to either throw it away or he'd get sacked. Now I think he's finally figuring out the balance between, yes, I still want to be able to throw the ball down the field, but if there's open turf or open grass, I'm going to take that. I'm going to take off and pick up extra yardage, because sometimes it doesn't matter if you're going to try to make a 20-yard throw. You can pick up 10 yards, get a first down, and reset the chains. Sometimes that's what this offense needs, and I think things are clicking a little bit more for Avery Johnson. Having a good year, too. Over 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he's taking care of the football. He's not putting the football in harm's way a ton. And he's also finding a guy in Jace Brown who you have to, I think if you look at this year, if Kansas State continues going down the path that they're going, you have to give Jace Brown so much credit for those first 4 games. If there's a guy that held this team together, it was him. Jace Brown made explosive plays at clutch moments, and even though they didn't win some of those games, he was a big reason they had a chance. So I hope people remember what he has done for this team, and even if things go well down the stretch and he continues playing well, he deserves so much credit for where this team is at. Now, Dylan Edwards' absence has been obviously very disappointing, but it's been nice to watch Joe Jackson be a good part of this rushing attack. And again, Avery Johnson's legs are another factor, but not having Dylan Edwards honestly hurts this team so much than I think that people realize. And they've obviously managed to do everything without him for most of the season, and I think that they're okay. They're not really panicking about it because it's more of an added bonus at this point. Now, for their defense, you're going to have to stop a Texas Tech offense that, even with the quarterback concerns, has plenty of explosive players. Now, Will Hammond, I believe I saw he tore his ACL. He's out for the rest of the year. So Baron Morton has to stay healthy, plain and simple. Now, you have Mitch Griffiths. You brought him in via the transfer portal, but Baron Morton has to stay healthy. And that's been a key for them throughout the entire season. It's so much more important now because you don't have Will Hammond to back him up. So what are we going to see more? I'm going to guess we're going to see more of Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams. We're not going to see any designed runs for Baron Morton unless it's absolutely necessary. And that's just fine, because when you have guys like Coy Aiken and Caleb Douglas, you don't necessarily need to have your quarterback do as much. You just need him to get them the football. You need your running backs to step up in a big way. And that's going to be a huge part of this. The offense is going to determine how high they rise and how well this game actually goes, because Kansas State is playing with a ton of confidence. They are a much different team than they were in those first 4 games. Now, a big way for Texas Tech to flip things in their favor quickly is a group that's done this all year, and they're no strangers to taking over a game. This Texas Tech defense has to find a way to shut down Avery Johnson and that Kansas State offense. So David Bailey, Lee Hunter, Romello Height, the whole defensive line knows what's at stake. They know that they lost a game now and they can't afford any more losses in this conference. They have to take over like they've done, like they did at Utah, like they've done multiple times this year. That is going to be huge for a Texas Tech team that still very much wants to be in that national championship conversation. They want to get to the playoff. They want to do some damage. It's just that it's going to be hard when you look at the remaining schedule that they have, including that Big 12 championship game. They have to take things one game at a time, and beating a Kansas State team that's playing with a lot more confidence than I think people realize is going to be challenging. How they handle those situations, how they handle the spotlight, from this point forward, and also how they keep Baron Morton healthy is going to be a big time thing. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that quarterback situation. And right now, Kansas State is playing with a lot of confidence. This game is at home. I'm going to pick the Wildcats based off what I've seen so far, or at least recently. Avery Johnson's playing with a lot of confidence. His legs could be a big time difference maker in this game. That's where you really are excited about what you've seen with him lately. So I'm going with Kansas State to win this game, but this is going to be a fun one. If you are ready for a thriller, this is probably going to be the one that gets it done for you in week 10. Delaware at Liberty is a very underrated game. And while Delaware is kind of the surprise of one of the surprises of Conference USA, especially for first year teams, Liberty's been a disappointment. And that being said, I will go with Liberty to win this one. I think they're able to get back on track. And even though it's been kind of a rocky season, a win here would be solid against a good Delaware team. Fresno State at Boise State. Boise State is a 17.5-point favorite at home. And Fresno State had a tough game against San Diego State last week, losing 23-0. Wasn't great for the offense, and going against Boise State on the road is going to provide a lot more challenges. Boise State gets the job done at home. Virginia at Cal could be super thrilling. The Cavaliers are a 4.5-point favorite. Chandler Morris must take care of the football. Cal has proven that they can make life a lot more difficult than it needs to be for the teams that come to the West Coast, and Virginia is hoping that they're able to kind of handle business and not get into upset territory, and it'll be fun to watch. I think this is going to be, this one could potentially be a high scoring game if Virginia is able to play at the level they're capable of. I do think that the Cavaliers do get the win here. Cal is a tough team, but I'm going to go with Virginia, even though they're traveling cross country and on the road. Mississippi State with a disappointing loss against Texas last week. That's one that they should have had, and they kind of let slip away. Now they're going against an Arkansas team that is still trying to fight for bowl eligibility. Taylor Green has been a big part of that offense, and I think that Mississippi State has their hands full. Arkansas is a 4.5-point favorite, and I think they're going to win this one. Oklahoma State at Kansas. Don't really have a ton to dive into. Jalen Daniels having a big year. Emmanuel Henderson also having a big year. Oklahoma State trying to figure what's going on at quarterback, and Kansas is going to win this game. There's not really much to debate in this one. South Carolina at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 21.5-point favorite, and it's been a disappointing year for South Carolina. Ole Miss has their sights on the college football playoff, and I think that continues in week 10. Unless Lenore Sellers is able to rediscover some of the magic that we thought he might have coming into the year, Ole Miss is going to win this one without much question. Wyoming travels to San Diego State, who's coming off a 23-0 win against Fresno State last week. That's a big win for the Aztecs. Sean Lewis's team is playing with a ton of confidence. Jaden Denegal really good for this offense. Lucky Sutton having a great year at running back. Wyoming, Caden Anderson having a pretty good year, and that's what we kind of expected coming into the season. They're going to need a lot of work to be able to pull off the upset here. The Aztecs are coming away with a win, in my opinion. Georgia Tech at NC State. Georgia Tech is a 6.5-point favorite and is still undefeated. Now, NC State has provided some difficulties for the teams they've faced, but they just haven't been able to finish the job. Their defense has struggled keeping teams off the board, and Georgia Tech is no stranger to being able to win tougher games. And going on the road to NC State in what could be a very tough environment, what usually is a tough environment, could be a challenge that they've yet to face. But they faced a couple of tough challenges this year, and they've passed them all so far. So for that reason, I'm going to go with actually NC State to pull off the upset here. I think that Georgia Tech has been kind of, if you look at some of their wins, they haven't really been dominant in those wins, and there have been kind of some questions about that. And I still think that NC State is very capable of pulling off the upset, and I think they're going to be able to do that here in this one. Oklahoma at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3.5-point favorite, and this is one that we thought could potentially have huge implications for the SEC race. And while it's not as huge as we thought coming into the year, it's still a pretty big game. Tennessee has been a really fun team to watch so far this year, and Joey Aguilar has lived up to expectations, I would say. I mean, it probably exceeded expectations so far this year. Tennessee is 6-2, and Aguilar is having a solid season for this offense. Over 2,300 yards, 18 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. The offense has been really balanced, and that's thanks to Aguilar, Chris Brazel at wide receiver, Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley. That trio of wide receivers has done a great job of letting Aguilar be a little bit more comfortable in the pocket, knowing that he has weapons downfield. Now, the rushing attack deserves some credit as well. Deshaun Bishop has exploded this year. 91 carries for 652 yards. That's 7.2 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. Star Thomas and Peyton Lewis have done their part as well. Star Thomas has been a surprise. I think he has contributed more than I anticipated this year, and he's been a nice complement to, or both of them have been a nice complement to Deshaun Bishop. This is a fun group to watch, and this offense has a ton of balance because of the emergence and the development of Joey Aguilar. Is he the most talented quarterback in college football? No. However, he has learned what his role is in this offense, and he has embraced it and found a way to be efficient with his opportunities. And it helps when you have the talent at wide receiver. The staff has done a good job of bringing in the right guys for that, and it's been really fun to watch him develop and shine so far this year. Now, this is going to be a tough test, but it is at home, so that's going to be nice. Now, the defense is going to have a good game. Stopping a guy like John Mateer is going to be challenging. However, the offense also has to find a way to slow down this Oklahoma defensive line. This is a defense that is very disruptive. They've had a number of games with double digits tackles for loss, and that is something they have to avoid if they want to win this game. Tennessee needs Joey Aguilar to play with confidence. That's not going to happen if he's getting hit a bunch or getting tackled. That is going to be a problem that they must address early and often. So how do you combat that? This offense is designed to kind of combat that by spreading out this Oklahoma defense. Some of the quick throws that they'll do will give Joey Aguilar that confidence and not have to be in fear that R. Mason Thomas or somebody else is going to be breathing down his neck the entire game. Aguilar needs to have a strong game if they want to win this one. Same thing for Oklahoma, though. John Mateer has to play well. And while it's nice that he has been back earlier than expected from that hand surgery, there's just been some inconsistent play. And I guess the one silver lining for Oklahoma is that, John Mateer might be back next year because of how he's played. He has not lived up to the hype, and that's okay. I think that there have been some things that obviously have affected him, but some of the decision making has to get better. And this defense is very good, but the offense, I think, at times has let this team down because of the decision making by Mateer. So still a very good quarterback, though. I think that he is better than what they had last year. That was definitely an upgrade. It's just that there are still some things that need to get better. That being said, if he does what he does well, because he's due for a big game. He's due for one of those games where you're just like, this is why Oklahoma went and brought him to campus, brought him to Norman. He is due for one of those games. Whether or not it's going to be against Tennessee remains to be the question. But this is an offense that still is very dangerous. So even though they have some concerns, it's a group that should be able to move the ball against this Tennessee defense, because Tennessee has not had consistent success on the defensive side of the ball. There have been times where teams like Syracuse have moved the ball down the field. Now, that game's been a while ago, so things have changed since then. But this is a group in Oklahoma's offense that has an opportunity to move the ball down the field. Now, if they give John Mateer time to throw, that's probably going to happen. If not, Tennessee might have their way. And honestly, it's really going to come down to Oklahoma's offense and what they're able to do. This defense for the Sooners has been the biggest reason for their success. The reason why they are 6-2 is because their defense has stepped up in a way that we expected them to coming into the year. You have a ton of players that have been disruptive. Kendall Daniels has been a nice addition. He has 9 tackles for loss. David Stone, 7 tackles for loss. Taylor Wine, 11 tackles for loss. R. Mason Thomas, 8.5 tackles for loss. You have a number of players that are living in the backfield. And that's what you need them to do to be able to beat Tennessee on the road. Playing in Neyland Stadium is going to be a challenge. It's going to be a problem. And if your defense can slow down that offense, that's going to keep the crowd out of it, and it's going to give you an opportunity to be successful. Again, John Mateer has to do his part, but this defense can get to Joey Aguilar and kind of negate some of that spread out offense that could give them a lot of trouble. If they're able to do that, this is going to be a closely contested game. If not, Tennessee probably takes care of business. It's really just going to come down to which defense is able to slow down that offense even more. Right now, I think that I trust Tennessee to do that a little bit better than Oklahoma. So I'm going to go with the Volunteers at home to win this game. USC at Nebraska is very underrated in my opinion. USC is a 6.5-point favorite, and Nebraska is trying to still prove the legitimacy of their team. Playing against USC at home is a great way for them to continue doing that. And if they're able to slow down this passing attack, really this offense of USC, then they're going to have a chance. If not, it's going to be a long day for the Cornhuskers. So even though they are at home, I'm going to go with USC to win that game. Kentucky at Auburn. Auburn, surprisingly, is only a 10.5-point favorite. And while Hugh Freeze is trying to figure out if he's going to be back next year, I think that could play a role in this one. Kentucky's been kind of surprising in some games. You look at the Texas game, that's a game that they definitely should have won. This is a game that could be closer than people realize. That being said, I am going to go with Auburn. I don't really have concerns about that. It's just going to be how close this game actually is. Mike Norvell got the dreaded vote of confidence from his administration, and now he's looking to hold off a Wake Forest team that is a lot better than people realize. Deshaun Purdy is taking over at quarterback for the Demon Deacons, and they're going on the road to hopefully pull off an upset against a Florida State team that is an 8.5-point favorite. And they are reeling right now. Florida State has been losing a lot more than they wanted to this season, and they're hoping to kind of stop some of the bleeding. That being said, with how Wake Forest is playing right now, why not go with the Demon Deacons? They're playing with a lot of confidence. Florida State has not shown that they're ready to bounce back quite yet. So why not go with the team that has been the surprise, or one of the surprises, in the ACC. Arkansas State and Troy. Troy is the surprise of the Sun Belt, if you ask my opinion, and Tucker Kilgrease has been a big reason why. Over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This is a team that I don't think a lot of people anticipated having this much success, and they're going to continue that with a win over the Red Wolves. Another big game in the Big 12 is Cincinnati heading to Utah. The Utes are 7.5-point favorites against a Cincinnati team that is looking to stay at the top of the Big 12. This Bearcats team came into the year, I think, with looking to be better, and they have exceeded those expectations. They're playing with a ton of confidence thanks to their star quarterback, and they find themselves 7-1. And that is not something that I think anybody had in the cards for this team. Now, Utah is also trying to keep their Big 12 playoff hopes, or Big 12 championship hopes, alive at 6-2. A loss here would essentially put those to bed, but they're playing at home, and playing at home at night against Utah is always going to be a challenge. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Brendan Sorsby is playing his best football right now, completing over 65% of his passes, throwing for over 1,800 yards, 20 touchdowns to just 1 interception. He's also run 69 times for 425 yards. He's averaging 6.2 yards per carry and has 7 touchdowns. This offense is balanced, and a big reason is because of Sorsby, but there's also guys that you need to give some recognition to. Tawi Walker and Evan Pryor are having great years for the Bearcats. The passing attack is as balanced as you'd probably want it to be. Cyrus Allen, 381 yards. Caleb Goody, 359 yards. Jeff Caldwell, 337 yards. Joe Royer, 340. There is not one guy that has been the consistent go-to guy, which maybe will be a problem if they need like a go-to or a big-time play in a big moment. But so far, this group has been by committee, and that's worked for them. Sorsby has found ways to get them all the football, and that could present some other challenges for Utah. You look at some of the teams Utah's played this year. Texas Tech specifically was able to spread things out and get the ball to multiple playmakers. If Cincinnati's able to do that, maybe they have a pretty good chance to win this one, pull off the upset on the road. Now, the defense has been very interesting to watch this year for Cincinnati. They're giving up just 19 points per game, and that has been a big reason why they've had success as well. So when they've needed to score points, the offense has stepped up. When they needed the defense to do their part, they've done that as well. And one of the names that we just haven't seen as much or been talking about as much is Dante Corleone. I wish that we were talking about him a little bit more, but we're not. And that's a guy that if you can replace him, and so far they've done a good job of that, then you're in good hands. And this defense has been kind of similar to the wide receivers. There's not really one player that you would say, hey, this is a guy that's head and shoulders above the rest. He is our superstar on defense, and that's okay. That's what they kind of need. They need a group that's going to rally to the football. They're going to need to be physical because Utah is going to bring that physical approach. And we saw what they did to Colorado last week. That's a group that's not messing around. Now, for Utah, this is a big opportunity because, like we talked about, you are going to still have your Big 12 title hopes alive, and that's on the line right now. And you need to be able to win this one to be able to handle business and make sure that you're in a position to make that happen. Now, I don't know what's going on with Devin Dampier, but when he's played, obviously he's been good. And even when he hasn't, you saw last week, Bert Ficklin was really good. And I think that he can get the job done, but long term, you're going to want Dampier back in the lineup whenever you can. Wayshawn Parker has been really good for the rushing attack, and Brian Davis has stepped up as the go-to wide receiver. So you've had a number of questions answered by certain players, and that's been really nice. The defense is going to have their hands full, plain and simple. Stopping Brennan Sorsby is going to be a challenge. However, I think that the Utah defense and Morgan Scalley are going to focus on how do we make life difficult for Sorsby. Because if you're being completely honest, I bet you Utah looks at this Cincinnati team and thinks Sorsby is really the only guy that scares us. So how do we take him away and force these other guys to beat us? That's going to be a way I think that they're going to approach this one. And it all starts up front, which is why you brought in John Henry Daly. You have Lander Barton that's been phenomenal at linebacker, Logan Fano at defensive end. You had guys already on campus that were going to be able to make life difficult for everybody. And Daly has been a nice spot, a bright spot for this defense as well. So when you're looking at this game, Sorsby's going to have his best performance. This might be his toughest test or Cincinnati's toughest test to date because you're going to Utah at night. And for everyone that doesn't know this yet, Cincinnati's going to find this out. Playing Utah on the road at night is a completely different level of difficulty. It's a completely different challenge, and it gives you a lot more stress of having to figure out how do we find success against this team? How do we find success against a team and a crowd that is making our life a lot more difficult? Communication is going to be hard. It's going to be tough to hear anything and get your checks. So how do you have that in place? How do you have that system in place already? Do you go with a silent count? Those are things that Cincinnati has to figure out because this Utah crowd is going to be absolutely insane. They're going to be going nuts. They're going to be loud. They're going to make things difficult for Cincinnati. And if they're not ready for that, it's going to be a long game. It's going to be a long day for Brendan Sorsby, and that's going to be tough. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Utah Utes to pull out the win. They're 7.5-point favorites for a reason, and they're going to keep their Big 12 title hopes alive. Final game we'll talk about is Hawaii at San Jose State. Now, San Jose State is not having a good year by any means, but they are 1.5-point favorites in this one. Michael Alejado, though, for Hawaii, playing really well as of late. And Hawaii is 6-2. They are not getting the credit they deserve for the success they've had recently. And that's going to be a fun one to end on the rest of the night. And San Jose State is good. Danny Scudero is great. Walker Eget is playing with a lot of confidence. This is one that could be an absolute barn burner. And it'll be fun to watch both quarterbacks play. I am going to go with Hawaii to win this one, but this one is going to be incredibly entertaining. That's it for week 10. Plenty of exciting games to look forward to this weekend. It's going to be fun, and some of these games have major implications within conference, within the college football playoff realm. Whatever you're looking at, you get it in week 10. Let me know what your predictions are in the comments section below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.